Jane rushes to her home holding a screwdriver with her hand. She got into her house and found her family, including an alternate version of herself. Then the scene shifts to 3 weeks earlier. When Jane gets back to her house after her morning jog, her kids were having breakfast and her husband was standing in the kitchen. She greeted them and went to take a shower to get ready to work. Jane drove to the lab she works at and found her colleague Reg on the phone talking to a guy called Dawkins trying to explain a delay. Jane takes the phone from him and tells the guy that they are working on it, and she asks him to give them a month. Reg and Jane are working on a teleportation experiment. They discuss setting the parameters for a 6-second teleportation trial. They placed an apple in the center and made sure that the coils were fully charged. Jane told Reg to abort the experiment if there are any signs of trouble. They start the power at 50 petawatts and gradually increase it to 100, then 150. Then they got a system overload warning, and Jane told Reg to take it offline. Jane went to her husband, Matt, and told him about what happened in the lab. She told him that Dawkins would shut off the lab and that she is frustrated because her 5 years of work would go to waste. Matt tried to comfort her by joking about running away together. After working in the lab with Reg, Jane went to her home and kissed her husband hello. She suggested that they order a takeout for dinner, but he told her that her sister brought a lasagna. Jane and Reg are preparing for another experiment. Jane decides to start with a high power level of 200 petawatts, then increase the power to 300 petawatt. Then the machine brightened and a wave of energy came out. Then they went to check if the apple was there, but it was gone. Then they also checked the second machine where the apple was supposed to be after being teleported, but it wasn't there either. Reg checks the sensor data and confirms that the apple has vanished. Jane was sitting at a dock when she got a call from Matt. He told her that he loves their kid and her. She asked what was wrong, but he was breathing heavily and he sounded wounded. He got into a car accident. Jane drove to the place and saw Matt's being taken. She cried and tried to run to him, but they stopped her. Jane and her kids spilled Matt's ashes in a river near the dock they sit on. Jane passed out on the table after drinking too much. Jake, her son, came and woke her up. She got up and tried to cook breakfast, dropping all the eggs on the floor in an attempt to do so. Ruth advised Jane to keep herself busy and that she should do the same thing that she always does. Then Jane started to study what happened in their previous experiment. She figured something and called Reg to let him know of the news. She told him that it might have made it to the receiver, but he reminded her that they couldn't find it in the chamber. She would mention Tegmark's theory of the parallel universe and suggest that it might have gone to a parallel world. Jane and Reg are in their lab talking about the possibility that their teleportation experiment has successfully sent an apple to a parallel world. Jane suggests that if their hypothesis is correct, there should be a similar chamber and scientists in the parallel world studying the same phenomena. Then they asked why they didn't send anything back. Reg said that they might have the wrong frequency. Then they both decide to send their parameters. Jane is home making breakfast for her kids when Reg called and rushed her to the lab. There was a piece of paper in the chamber that said greetings. Then another object came as they were standing, and it was the apple with a bit taken out of it. They were amused and they wanted to know more. Jane brought a camera and they sent it. After a while, the camera came back. There was a showing in their lab. The one recording the video is Jane Herseyev, and she is astonished to see herself, her parallel self, on the screen, confirming that Tegmark's theory of parallel worlds is correct. Then Jane suggested physically crossing over to the parallel world. But Reg said that it is dangerous, and that even a slight fluctuation in the parameters could have catastrophic effects on their DNA. After that, Jane asked Ruth if she would look after the kids if something were to happen to her. Ruth told her she'd. Jane went to the lab and got in the chamber herself and teleported herself. She found herself in the lab of the parallel world. She went to the dock where she and Matt used to go, and she saw him standing. He was shocked when he saw her. He said that she was supposed to be dead, and Jane would explain that the experiment worked and that from the world she came in, he was the one that died. She'd tell him that they have kids in the other world, and he asks if she can take him there. She teleported Matt and followed him after. Reg came to the lab and saw Matt. He started freaking out, saying that she can't just drag people across dimensions. Jane went home and greeted Ruth and her kids. She told Ruth that she can go because she'd take the kids to the movies. After Ruth leaves, Jane explains to her children about her work on teleportation and the concept of parallel worlds. She told them that she discovered a world very similar to theirs and teleported herself and found an identical version of their father who didn't die in that world. Jane tells them their father is waiting in the car. They all go out and they see Matt standing. Sam and Jake ran and hugged him, and Jane smiled looking at them. They all are sitting in the living room having tea, and Jake was asking if Sam and Jake in the other world are missing a dad, and Matt told him they don't exist there, and Jane would tell them it's she that's dead in that world. In the morning, Sam and Jake are having breakfast, and Matt is standing in the kitchen. Jane came back from her jog and he gave her a fruit shake. Jane Jane was working on her computer, and when she turned around, she saw Matt standing. She gasped and told him that he scared her. He told her everything is beautiful here and different from his world. She asked if he was happy, and he told her that she is the best that ever happened to him. Jane woke up and saw something sticking out of Matt's pocket. She picked it up and looked to figure out what it was. Matt came and she asked him what it was. He said that it is a self-defense cause his world is violent. They were all having breakfast when Jane's mum showed up. Jane and Jake greeted her by the door and tried not to let her in, but she got in anyway and greeted Sam. Then she asked if they had a guest because there were 4 plates served. Jake told her that he had an extra serving. Jane's mom finally left without seeing Matt. Matt was out walking when someone approached him and asked if he wasn't supposed to be dead. The guy thought it was an insurance scam, and Jane and Matt took the insurance money saying that Matt is dead. The guy told Matt that he'd keep his secret if he gave him money and tried to blackmail him. Matt turned back and pulled out the device he told Jane was self-defense and shot at him. The guy fell down with a burned wound on his chest. Matt came back and Jane asked where he was. She was worried about him because he was gone all afternoon. He told her he was looking around. She told him someone could see him and they wouldn't be able to explain themselves. Jane woke up and went down the stairs. She went to Sam's room and she saw Matt standing staring at Sam while she was sleeping. He turned around, probably feeling like someone was there, but Jane wasn't there. Matt came to the kitchen and Jane asked him what he was doing in Sam's room. He told her seeing his daughter laying there was beautiful. Jane went to the lab and Reg was there working. Reg asked if they would tell Dawkins anything, but Jane told him they would say anything yet. Then he asked how Matt was doing. She told that he was fine. As she was driving home, she saw a police car. A guy approached her and asked if she had passed by this road, and she told him she did. He asked her if notices anything suspicious. On the other hand, Matt is watching the news about the dead guy. He turned the TV off when Jane walked in. Jane told him that the police stopped her on the way here. She told him that someone was murdered in the park, and Matt acted shocked. Matt walked into a room Sam was sitting working on a drawing. He said hi and looked at the drawing. He picked it up and started screaming at her, asking what it was. Sam started crying, telling him that it's a school project. Jane and Jake came running to and asked what was going on. Matt showed them the drawing and said it was insulting and left the room. Jane started to comfort her, saying we just have to give him more time to settle, but Jake said that he is weird. Meanwhile, Matt was in the bedroom pacing. Jane went to him and knocked on the door. She told him they needed to talk, and he frightened the kid. He said he overreacted, and she suggested sending the kids to their grandma for a while. She asked if he was happy here, and he thought she was trying to send him back and started asking if she was threatening him. She said she would never do that. Jane took the kids to Ruth's house. Matt called and said he hoped that Sam would forgive him. He asked where she was, and she told him she would go to the lab after dropping the kids off. He asked if Reg would be there, and she said yeah, since he is her assistant, and he said he is more than that, and he hung up the phone. Jane went to the lab and told Reg that he was right, and she shouldn't have brought Matt here. Her plan was to go back to Matt's world and take a look at his life. Reg agreed to boot it up, and she got in the chamber. After being teleported, Jane went to their house there. As she was looking around, dirty plates were on the table and in the sink, and there was a fallen chair. She made her way upstairs to the bedroom, and she saw someone was under the blanket. She went there and removed the cover and saw her own dead body with a hole in the chest. Reg was in the lab and saw Matt standing. He was shocked to see him there, just standing and staring, and he asked what he was doing. Matt asked where Jane was. While this was happening, Jane was trying to come back to her world. Matt was going around the lab, and Reg was telling him not to touch anything. Then suddenly, Matt unplugged the teleportation device and hit Reg. Then he shot him with his device and killed him. Jane couldn't go back, and she was trying to figure out what the problem was, thinking it was from this side. Then she remembered that she told Matt that she was going to the lab and knew he had something to do with it. Jane was woken by Reg, and she was shocked to see him there. She asked how he got there, and he told her he drove there. He asked if Matt confiscated her phone again because he called her several times and she didn't pick up. Then he tried to kiss her, but she stopped him. He started telling her what he had been working on from his house, and she asked if he had one of these machines at home, and he said yes. They went to his place and she fixed the machine and told him they'd be testing it. She got in the machine and told Reg to push the slider to 350 petawatts. Then she teleported and Reg followed after her. They stole a car and went to Jane's place. She told Reg to wait for her and got inside. She saw her entire family, including herself, and went running back. She told Reg that they were in the wrong world and they went back to the lab. She told Reg that his Jane was dead and that she came from another world and that she thinks Matt killed her. A police officer started knocking and Jane quickly got in the chamber and teleported. In the other world, Matt called someone and got Ruth's address. Jane went to Ruth's place, but no one was there. She called Ruth and she told her that they were heading to Jane's home. Jane saw Matt coming to the house through the window and hid. Then she managed to get out and went home. She found Ruth and the kids and told them they had to hide. Matt came to the house and found Jane on the bed. bed. She told him she saw what he did, and he told her that she cheated. He was about to shoot her, then Jake hit him with a baseball bat. They tied him up and put him in the chamber and teleported him. After 2 months, Jane finished up breakfast with her kids, and Ruth and they went out. Someone knocked on the door, and she went there to open it and find Reg standing. He told her that she is in the wrong world. Jane's face froze in shock as she absorbed Reg's words, her mind racing with the reality that her life might not be what she believed it to be. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.